Chapter 11, Food Allergen, Preventive Controls for Human Food, presented by David Rosson. The preventive controls for human food regulation requires documented food allergen preventive controls to prevent allergen cross-contact and to ensure accurate allergen labeling is on finished food products. The need for specific food allergen controls is determined through the hazard analysis process, and this chapter focuses on determining what components of the food allergen program are allergen preventive controls. The specific allergen control practices required to manage food allergens depend on the specific product and manufacturing processes and practices. Common causes for the presence of undeclared food allergens were discussed in Chapter 4. The required elements of allergen controls in a food safety plan are accurate labeling to inform consumers and prevention of allergen cross-contact, and the associated monitoring procedures are addressed in this chapter. Allergen testing, which is a potential verification procedure, is also briefly discussed in the context of allergen cross-contact prevention. As a reminder, other elements of verification were discussed in Chapter 10. This is not intended to be a comprehensive training course on allergen management. Thus, references are provided for further information at the end of the chapter. By the end of this chapter, participants will be able to recognize that the hazard analysis may identify hazards that require allergen preventive controls. Recognize the role of good manufacturing practice, GMP, and preventive controls in the management of allergens. Explain required food, allergen preventive controls, allergen cross-contact prevention, and allergen labeling. Explain allergen preventive control options. Chapter 6, Hazard Analysis, and Chapter 7, Preventive Controls, Determination. Describe the process of evaluating food allergen hazards to determine the allergen preventive controls that are required to be included in the food safety plan. On the slide above and on the next slide, several of the steps identified in the e.g. Food Company cheese biscuit omelet example as requiring allergen preventive controls have been illustrated. Biscuits contain a wheat allergen, which is not present in other e.g. Food Company food products, only in the cheese biscuit omelet product. Therefore, we are going to follow the wheat biscuit through the cheese biscuit omelet process. The highlighted step, receiving frozen biscuits, column 1, identifies the specific food allergens, wheat, milk, column 2, and concludes that a food safety hazard requiring a preventive control is present, column 3. The justification, column 4, identifies one element related to allergen control, the need for allergen labeling to inform consumers. Column 5 identifies the preventive control to address the allergen concern. Allergen control number 2, labeling of the finished omelet at subsequent step. The first step illustrated on the slide, assemble wrap, column 1, identifies the potential food safety hazard, allergen cross-contact from wheat biscuit, column 2, and concludes that a food safety hazard requiring a preventive control is present, column 3. The justification, column 4, identifies how the wheat from the biscuit used in the cheese biscuit omelet could be unintentionally incorporated into the plain and cheese omelet finished products which do not contain wheat. Column 5 identifies the preventive control to address the allergen concern, which is sanitation control number 1, assemble a wrap table sanitation, which will be discussed further in Chapter 12. Sanitation preventive controls. Whether this is considered an allergen preventive control or a sanitation preventive control does not matter as long as the activity controls the hazard. The term sanitation includes both cleaning and sanitizing activities. Cleaning in this example is also necessary to control allergens. Sanitizing, which is intended to kill microorganisms, has little or no impact on allergens. As discussed in Chapter 4, most of the food allergic reactions in the United States are caused by tree nuts, peanut, fish, milk, eggs, crustacean shellfish, wheat, soy, and sesame. Sesame has been added as the 9th major food allergen, requiring labeling as of 2023. The Food Allergen Labeling and Consumer Protection Act, FALSPA, and the 2021 Food Allergy Safety Treatment Education and Research, FASTER, Act mandates labeling of the 9 major food allergen groups if they are present in a food product. Thus, these are the allergens that a facility would identify as hazards requiring a preventive control during the hazard analysis. When labeling a product containing a food allergen or allergens, the label must list the specific allergens to inform the consumer who may have an allergy to that specific item. For example, if tree nuts are present, then the specific tree nuts must also be on the label. Similarly, individual species of fish and crustaceans must be labeled. A discussion of labeling is presented later in this chapter. If all products produced in a given facility have identical food allergen profiles, then the allergen program needs to address only proper labeling, because allergen cross-contact is not an issue. Sometimes a supply chain program may be necessary, depending on the source and complexity of ingredients used in the product. For example, almond ingredients may come from a facility that processes other tree nuts. It will be important that the supplier has controls to address labeling and allergen cross-contact. See Chapter 13, Supply Chain, Preventive Controls, for more information. The term recognized food allergen is the same as major food allergen. The term food allergen profile is defined by the FDA as the food allergen sources present or absent in a food. FDA Hazard Guide. Implementing a food allergen program starts with gaining a comprehensive understanding of which food allergens are used in the facility and how these food allergens are received, handled, and processed within the facility. From this understanding, the food allergen program can be developed. The food allergen program begins with the various good manufacturing procedures, GMPs, and standard operating procedures, SOPs, that support allergen control. However, a food allergen program often goes beyond basic GMPs and SOPs to include the appropriate preventive controls required as an outcome of the company's hazard analysis process. The preventive controls may include controls for cross-contact, development of labels listing allergens, and label management in the facility. These controls could extend to the supply chain as well. It is key to be fully aware of all allergens used in the facility. Developing a master list of all ingredients and the allergens they contain is one tool that may be useful. Information from suppliers describing the presence or absence of allergens in the ingredients they provide, and details about how they manage these allergen hazards, is also helpful. After determining which products contain which allergens, this information is used to determine what risks these allergens may present in the manufacturing process. Cross-contact occurs when a residue or trace amount of an allergen unintentionally contaminates a product that doesn't have that allergen. Such occurrences are sporadic. Managing cross-contact starts with knowledge of what allergens are used in which products and where potential environmental or incidental exposure could occur during food processing or handling. Exposure could happen when multiple foods containing different allergens are manufactured on the same processing line, or use shared equipment or utensils, or when product is staged or stored closely, such as during changeovers. If there is the opportunity for incidental cross-contact, such as through dust on air currents, controls to either prevent or at least minimize allergen cross-contact as much as possible must be in place. Let's take a look at this definition. Allergen cross-contact: unintentional incorporation of a food allergen into a food. Allergen controls start at the product design phase, when the implications of adding new or unique allergens should be considered. Ideally, the food safety team should be engaged with research and development (R&D) efforts to review changes and provide input on new formulas. Members of the food safety team may question the design process, including whether introducing the new allergen is necessary or whether a substitute that will not impact the allergen management programs can be used. Companies may also need to consider the risk of removing allergens that are present in products with regard to cross-contact. For example, if E.g. Food Company chose to take milk out of their plain omelets, they would need to control dairy hazards between that product and the omelets with cheese. This type of situation could occur with the increased offering of plant-based foods that result in different allergen profiles. Broad considerations are needed to help prevent cross-contact and include suppliers, transport, and the receipt of goods, ingredient storage, handling, and processing of allergens, including the use of shared equipment and utensils, personnel practices, possible misuse of rework and processing aids, the effectiveness of cleaning, any conveyor or transport systems, and the generation of significant dust containing the allergen that may move through the air. Each of these represents a factor or area where cross-contact needs to be addressed, so it is important to determine the risk of cross-contact and what controls need to be implemented. In some cases, SOPs may be utilized, but in other cases, an allergen preventive control may be needed. The determination of this need was accomplished during the hazard analysis process. Allergen preventive controls must document those procedures used to prevent allergen cross-contact when the hazard analysis process identifies allergens as hazards requiring a preventive control. The E.g. Food Company's ingredient food allergen assessment lists all of the raw materials used for products, along with the supplier's name. This information helps E.g. Food Company identify allergens that are in their products, depending on the ingredients used in each product. There is also a column for when precautionary labeling, e.g. may contain, is used by the supplier of the given ingredient. This is important for evaluating the potential risk of cross-contact from that supplier. This concept is discussed further in subsequent slides. Consider precautionary labeling that comes in on an ingredient and whether it needs to be carried forward to the labels on the finished product. The developed food allergen program can start with various basic GMPs and SOPs that support allergen control. However, a food allergen program typically goes beyond basic GMPs and SOPs to include appropriate allergen preventive controls. There are two main types of allergen preventive controls within the facility: those that focus on preventing cross-contact and those that ensure proper labeling. Much of this chapter will be devoted to discussing these two types of controls. Allergen preventive control of the incoming raw materials is another important aspect of a facility's overall allergen program. This will be discussed in Chapter 13, Supply Chain Preventive Controls. Many of the GMP procedures used in food facilities are developed to include elements that provide support for the control of allergens. The subsequent slides describe how typical SOPs can also include allergen management. It is important to note that some aspects of these SOPs could be elevated to the level of preventive controls when the hazard analysis indicates the need. GMPs for personnel employees can be a vehicle for allergen cross-contact. This can occur as employees move from one product area to another product area, unknowingly carrying allergens on their clothing or their gloves. If they eat food containing allergens in the break area and fail to wash their hands, they may carry food allergens into the processing area. Employee movement may have to be restricted from one allergen handling area to another to prevent the risk of their outer clothing carrying residual allergen to the processing area. Approaches to consider include using color-coded uniforms or hairnets that are specific to a processing area or to a type of allergen-containing food so that these employees can be easily identified if they enter an area with different allergens, and providing dedicated outer clothing, e.g. jacket or smock, that remains in the entrance to the processing area during breaks. All employees need to be reminded to wash their hands, including maintenance or quality assurance staff members, when moving between areas that handle different allergens to avoid allergen cross-contact issues. GMPs for ingredient receipt and storage inspecting raw materials upon receipt provides an opportunity to identify that the correct materials are received and that all allergens are identified. A documented check will help ensure that the receiver has identified the raw materials allergens and that they are correct for the item being received. This is accomplished by reviewing the raw material labels and verifying the listed allergens against the ingredient specification. It is common practice to place signage, often in the form of placards, on the incoming materials to designate the allergen or group of allergens contained in the given raw material. Signage can be achieved through use of common wording for allergens, a letter designation, or a color coding scheme. This receiving process is often considered a prerequisite program within the food allergen program, but may be elevated to a preventive control in a facility that handles many different raw materials with different allergen profiles. Once received, raw materials are stored based upon allergen content, separating allergen and non-allergen product. Dedicated pallets, combos, or bins for allergenic material can be utilized for the specific raw material. The use of allergen signage, such as placards, can help facilitate the storage process. With signage, consideration should be given to the use of languages other than English. Additionally, if signage is used on pallets, establish a uniform placement protocol so that the allergen label is visible when the pallet is opened and boxes are removed. Storage of food products with the same allergens in the same area can simplify management. For example, milk and cheese can be stored together because they both are dairy products containing a milk allergen. However, walnuts and almonds cannot be stored together, even though they are both tree nuts. Because they are different allergens, a common practice is that allergen-containing materials are not stored above non-allergen materials. If bags or bins are opened to take test samples upon receipt, dedicated knives should be used to open bags containing specific allergens, and then those open bags should be properly sealed after opening. Determine if controls are needed for forklift drivers to prevent damage to packaging. Pierced or dropped bags and cracked or broken bins present allergen cross, contact opportunities that should be avoided and promptly rectified. GMP considerations during handling and preparation. Segregation of allergenic foods and ingredients during handling and preparation helps to manage allergen cross-contact in the manufacturing setting. In the processing environment, allergen control considerations must encompass from the time a unique allergen is introduced into the production process and extend through cleanup. For example, powders can easily disperse throughout an area through the air. Thus, weighing allergenic powders in a different room or dedicated area is useful. Covering totes that contain allergen-containing ingredients during transfer from one room to the next helps to prevent allergen cross-contact. A review of ventilation systems over lines that handle powders may reveal a potential allergen cross-contact issue. Controlling traffic patterns to reduce allergen cross-contact, such as limiting the movement of people into and out of processing areas with allergen-containing product, can reduce the risk of employees' source. A few more things from the last slide. First, the use of physical barriers between processing lines may be effective where traffic controls are difficult to implement. The use of dedicated tools for processing lines may also be helpful. Transfer of allergens through water or oil can also occur. Allergen cross-contact can occur through the reuse of cooking media, such as water or frying oil. Consider possible risks from water used to boil eggs or bagel doughs, and from oils used to fry seafood. In addition, recirculated sanitation solutions may pose risks if the soil load is heavy. Reuse of these solutions is not recommended, especially when allergens are a concern. It may not always be possible to implement dedicated systems for processing products with different allergen ingredients. If a line is used to process both allergen-containing and non-allergen-containing food products, the schedule sequence should run unique allergens toward the end. For example, vanilla ice cream might be scheduled first, followed by one with added pecans, followed by one with added pecans and almonds. If an allergen present in a current product run is not present in the next scheduled product run, a complete sanitation process must occur. Sanitation activities must be robust enough to remove all visible traces of an allergen residue prior to starting up the next product. If possible, only run products with the same allergen ingredient on the same production line. Common industry practices for using scheduling to help manage risks from cross-contact have been published by the Food Allergy Research and Resource Program, FARRP, which includes the following. Schedule long runs of products containing allergenic ingredients to minimize changeovers. Segregate production areas for allergenic and non-allergenic products. If this is not possible, schedule manufacturing of non-allergenic foods before processing foods with allergens. Schedule sanitation immediately after production of foods containing allergenic ingredients. And when product design permits, add allergenic ingredients as late in the process as possible. An example of a production line allergen assessment for the E.G. Food Company appears above. Only one product, the cheese biscuit omelet, has a unique allergen, wheat. Scheduling implications and cleaning implications are noted, illustrating that the cheese biscuit omelet is run at the end. E.G. Food Company utilizes the allergen run order log to capture the sequence of products produced in order to identify that a complete sanitation process will need to be completed after a unique allergen is produced. See the monitor run sequencing as described above and at the bottom of the daily sanitation log. In the Chapter 11, resources as well as Appendix 3. An awareness of the allergen profile of each formula must extend to rework when considering managing potential cross-contact or misidentification concerns. Considerations for proper handling of rework and work in progress are described on this slide. Mark the rework bin properly with information such as name of the rework or QA hold product, exact name of the allergen, date, time of manufacture, date per time put into storage, and date or time for using rework if known. Color-coded labels may be helpful. To reduce opportunities for cross-contact, use sturdy containers with secure covers and interior disposable plastic liners where appropriate. Use dedicated containers, lids, and pallets when feasible, or thoroughly wash and sanitize containers before reuse. Using containers that are easily moved without use of equipment to hold allergen-containing materials, e.g. totes on wheels, makes it easier to segregate the material and reduces the potential for damage by forklifts. Containers must be thoroughly cleaned to remove any traces of allergenic material. Make sure there are documented procedures for how rework is to be used. Allergen-containing rework is only to be used in a product that contains the same allergens. A food allergen program is a critical component of a company's food safety system. Food allergen programs start with identifying allergens and how they will be optimally controlled. Many of the controls will include various SOPs related to GMPs, but some will be elevated to be managed as allergen preventive controls. Typically, these will be in areas focused on preventing cross-contact via appropriately targeted sanitation and aspects of product labeling. The food safety team decides how these are to be best managed. A thorough understanding of where allergenic ingredients exists in the manufacturing environment, how the allergenic ingredients are handled, and where allergenic ingredients are introduced into the process can influence whether practices are managed as GMP, a prerequisite program, or as a preventive control. Above are examples of GMPs, or prerequisite programs that could reasonably elevate to preventive controls in a facility that handles allergens. The allergen preventive controls could focus on preventing cross-contact, with controls directed at personal hygiene, such as hand washing, facility layout, related to personnel movement and dust management, the use of dedicated tools and equipment, and cleaning of equipment. Additionally, there could be very specific instances where personnel practices or changeovers might need to be considered, e.g., as described in Section 117.80C2, related to hand washing, changing garments, etc., if indicated in the hazard analysis. Also, at ingredient receipt and storage, there may be a need for a preventive control aimed at assuring that ingredient labeling is accurate and the allergens listed on the label match what is listed on the specification. The FDA has detected issues related to allergen control, leading to enforcement in the form of warning letters. See examples, additional reading, resources, and references at the end of this chapter. In these instances, the FDA had identified hand washing as a preventive control practice where there was direct hand manipulation of allergen-containing products or ingredients, and there was inadequate hand washing or glove changing to prevent allergen cross-contact. In other words, situations where the risk for cross-contact occurring from hand hygiene practices are significant. The FDA has identified hand washing as part of allergen preventive control. In the FDA Hazard Guide, Chapter 11, Food Allergen Program, the FDA discusses the two primary types of allergen preventive controls used within a processing facility. One is how an allergen preventive control can be applied to prevent allergen cross-contact. The other is how an allergen preventive control can be applied to ensure accurate allergen labeling. Allergen cross-contact. And an allergen preventive control may be required in circumstances where two different products with different allergen profiles are made using the same equipment. An allergen preventive control can be applied to ensure that allergen residues have been properly removed through sanitation. This can also be viewed as a sanitation preventive control. Other procedures that can become allergen preventive controls include the procedures for handling rework or the control of exposed and processed product to prevent opportunities for cross-contact. Undeclared allergens. Preventive controls can be applied to aspects of labeling, and this is especially important in those facilities that may handle a number of different allergen-containing products and or have a variety of labels with different allergen profiles. Aspects of the labeling process that can become an allergen preventive control include the design of the label to ensure the proper allergens are listed on the proposed label, and the labeling of product to prevent the incorrect label from being placed on the product. This chapter will go into more detail on these aspects of allergen preventive controls. When a facility decides to designate an aspect of the allergen program as an allergen preventive control, the decision will be driven by the hazard analysis process. Undeclared allergens may also be present if an ingredient supplier does not manage their allergens effectively, or if a label supplier does not print label stock accurately. Chapter 13 addresses relevant aspects of allergen control in a supply chain program. Effective cleaning of utensils and equipment at a frequency specific to the hazards in the facility is an essential element in an allergen management program. Food contact surfaces should be cleaned to the point where there are no residual allergens on that surface prior to the production of food products without the allergen profile of the previous product. Effective cleaning between products with different allergen profiles is necessary to remove residual allergenic proteins. The cleaning procedures used must be appropriate for the food matrix and the type of equipment. Refer to Chapter 12, Sanitation Preventive Controls, for information on cleaning procedure documentation requirements, and Appendix 5, Sanitation Basics, for more information on cleaning. FARRP has published guidance on components of an effective allergen control plan, which also describes recommendations for allergen cleaning. Cleaners must be effective at removing the type of soil and appropriate for the specific equipment surface. Cleaning activities must follow sanitation SOPs and be consistent with the instructions on the cleaning product's label. The SOPs should include detailed instructions to ensure that the personnel who are cleaning know what steps are required. Key criteria, including required chemical concentration, temperature of mixtures, flow rates, etc., should be specified in the SOPs as necessary for consistent results. The SOP should also detail how the equipment must be disassembled and when rinse steps are required. Verification demonstrating that the procedures are consistently followed is required. The regulation does not require validation of allergen cleaning, but this is strongly encouraged. Numerous allergen recalls have occurred because equipment could not be adequately cleaned to remove allergen residues. The preventive controls for human food regulation does not require validation of allergen cleaning. However, validation is strongly encouraged when products containing different allergen profiles are run in the facility. Numerous allergen recalls have occurred because equipment could not be adequately cleaned to remove allergen residues, resulting in allergen cross-contact. Verification demonstrating that the procedures are consistently followed is required. Verification activities can include visual checks that the cleaning process was completed and record checks to ensure the proper levels of cleaner were used. It is important to ensure that the sanitation procedures themselves do not further contribute to the potential for unintended allergen presence in the facility. For example, spraying an uncleaned production line with a high-pressure hose to remove food solids can cause food allergens to be scattered, carried by water droplets. Validation of allergen cleaning procedures is not required, but may be beneficial. Monitoring of the cleaning process. To be sure cleaning procedures are correctly completed is an important aspect of verification. Visually observing the cleaning process is one form of verification. This can include checking that the right chemical cleaners are being used at the appropriate concentration and application temperature. Many companies use a standard of visually clean as the primary evidence of allergen cleaning. This will be discussed next in more detail. Validation of allergen cleaning is not required. However, validation may be desirable for complex equipment the first time a unique allergen is introduced on a production line, or when major changes are made to product formulation to determine if cleaning procedures need to be adjusted. Simple to clean equipment, such as a stainless steel tabletop, may not need validation if the surface is visibly clean, i.e., no residue or film, when cleaning procedures are followed. If residue can be seen on the equipment is not clean. But if it looks clean, there may still be the presence of films or protein sheen. Chemical test kits can be used to check the cleanliness of the surface and can be an important tool for verifying cleanliness and the absence of allergenic proteins. Nonspecific tests are helpful. However, limitations exist when using tests such as nonspecific ATP or protein tests for verifying allergen cleaning. Some of these tests are not sensitive enough to detect levels of protein that could cause an allergic reaction. Validated allergen-specific test kits are available for some food allergens and can be used to detect the presence of food allergens in food products or on food contact surfaces using swabs. When using push-through material as an allergen removal procedure, it is important to establish safe times and/or volumes for such a procedure, and so it is important to verify that these procedures work. If a surface cannot be effectively swabbed, final rinse water can be collected and tested, assuming the equipment and environment is suitable for wet cleaning, as discussed in Chapter 12, Sanitation Preventive Controls. Finished product can also be tested as a verification procedure. Appropriate corrective action is needed if allergens which are not on the label are detected. This slide demonstrates an example of equipment cleaning as an allergen preventive control to manage cross-contact hazards, including possible parameters and values. Shown are the criterion to which the equipment could be cleaned, all the details of monitoring, corrections, and corrective actions. 2 different ways that verification can be done, and a listing of the relevant records. Allergen label controls must ensure that the label on the product correctly names the food source of all its ingredients, which are or which contain food allergens. Controls must also ensure the ingredient listing on the product label matches the formulation of that product. Simply put, the label must be correctly designed, listing the appropriate allergens in that given food product, and then that label is applied to the correct product so that the allergens match the formulated food inside the packaging. Allergens listed on food labels are essential to protecting consumers with food allergies. It is the only way for the consumer to know which allergens are in the product they are about to consume. Undeclared allergens, those allergens in the product but not declared on the label, can lead to illness and death of an allergen-sensitive consumer. Labeling and packaging errors are both leading causes of allergen-related recalls. Not only are these errors an issue for consumer health, but they can also result in brand damage, regulatory action, manufacturing disruption, and potential liability when illness occurs. Procedures that ensure accurate allergen labeling are required in the food safety plan when a food product contains a food allergen. Elements include ensuring that the verbiage is accurate on the label in compliance with the labeling laws, and that any formula changes are managed appropriately so that the correct label is used on the new formula. Any out-of-date labels in inventory need to be removed from active inventory. The FALCPA Act and the FASTER Act, see additional reading, resources, and references at the end of this chapter, provide regulatory requirements that apply to ensure proper allergen labeling on FDA-regulated products. Supply chain programs are also important to ensure that food ingredient suppliers accurately identify allergens in the food ingredients and food products provided. Precautionary allergen labeling, such as may contain or manufactured in a facility that produces a specific allergen, is not a preventive control. While allergen cross-contact of food products with major food allergens can occur in the manufacturing process, when food product is exposed to the environment, precautionary labeling cannot be used to compensate for poor GMPs or inadequate allergen controls. When an incoming ingredient has a precautionary label, the facility must determine how to address this potential allergen as part of its labeling requirements. Chapter 13, Supply Chain Preventive Controls, addresses additional requirements for supply chain programs, which include documentation and verification procedures. Potential resources for determining labeling options when an ingredient has a precautionary label are FDA Guidance for Industry, the Food Allergy Research and Resource Program, FARRP. Both resources are available in the additional reading, resources, and references list at the end of the chapter. This slide is a lead-in to the subsequent examples outlining specifics of different points where label content controls can be implemented. There are two primary aspects: designing the label so that it states the appropriate allergens, and checking the accuracy of the labels upon receipt or printing. Proofreading label text is a useful tool to prevent errors, and some organizations consider this a preventive control. If the label is complicated, use more than one person to proofread and consider developing a written approval process to better ensure accuracy. Standard operating procedures should ensure that labels reflect the current formulation being made. For incoming labels shipped from an external label maker, labels can be checked upon receipt by comparing the new labels to a standard label or to a label specification, specifically inspecting for allergens. Using an identity coding system for printed labels and packages, such as color codes that are easy to visualize, can help with effective label management on the production floor. Procedures that do not allow co-mingling of labels on the same pallet during storage also minimize the potential for the wrong label to be used in production. This slide demonstrates an example of the aspects of label design as an allergen preventive control for labels that are printed by a packaging supplier, received by the plant, and applied to the food item, including possible parameters and values. Shown on the slide are the criterion that the verbiage on the label must match the formula being run. All of the details of monitoring, correction, verification, and a listing of the relevant records. This slide demonstrates an example of an allergen preventive control for labels that are printed on site by the facility and then applied to the food product. The example includes possible parameters and values for label controls. An example of a type of company that may use this process is a private label bakery manufacturing a wide range of baked goods that may be sold at a grocery store. It is crucial that the information in the printing software from which the label is printed accurately reflects the formula being run. Shown are the criterion that the text on the label must match the formula being run. All of the details of monitoring, correction, verification, and a listing of the relevant records. This slide demonstrates an example of an allergen preventive control for label receiving by warehouse staff. The example includes possible parameters and values for label controls to ensure that the incoming label is correct. It is crucial that the information on the received label accurately reflects the formula for the designated product and accurately declares the allergens in the formula. Also shown are the details of monitoring, correction, verification, and a listing of the relevant records. Ensuring that the correct label is applied to a product containing a food allergen is a required allergen preventive control. Shown on the slide are a variety of approaches that could be used to help achieve this, including matching the allergen listing on the label to the formula. These are examples of procedures. Each facility should determine which is best for its operation. Continuous monitoring, such as a barcode scanner, is the most effective, but may not be affordable for some processors. Colored striping on stacked flat labels in packaging machines is another approach to reduce operator error. This is particularly useful when the label supply runs out mid-production. Returning unused packaging materials to the warehouse and not mixing them with other packaging materials helps avoid packaging mix-ups. It is best to store packaging, e.g. plastic cups, lids, in boxes that are sealed. Line personnel need to be trained to ensure product labels are switched properly at product changeover. This is especially important when labels are applied to products such as cans that are held in unlabeled inventory and labeled well after production. A variety of other measures can help to reduce mistakes, such as a system to assure that out-of-date labels and packaging are removed and destroyed in a timely manner. Keeping accurate inventory records of labels and packaging can help identify issues. If the numbers do not match, it is likely the wrong label was used on a packaging run. Stage packaging so that only those needed for current product are in the packaging area. Check packaging film labels for accuracy, e.g., by comparing the label to the formulation or recipe of the product being produced before the label roll is placed on the packaging machine. For on-site computer-generated labels, verify that the correct electronic file is applied for each label, and have a system that lets only authorized personnel edit electronic label files. Remember that the essential allergen preventive control is that product containers and labels applied during processing are monitored to ensure that allergen information on labels matches ingredient specifications of the food product. Because applying a label to a package is part of a process, some companies may manage allergen labeling at a process control step and call it a CCP. Other companies may manage it in what they may call an allergen control plan. Either approach is fine as long as the allergens that are present in the food are declared on the label. This slide demonstrates an example of finished product labeling as an allergen preventive control. including possible parameters and values. It is crucial that the proper label is applied to the finished product, matching the formula being made to the label being used, and that there is an accurate declaration of the allergens in the formula. Also shown are the details of monitoring, correction, verification, and a listing of the relevant records. Using their recipe sheets and the ingredient allergen assessment, the e.g. food company personnel document the allergen statements that must appear on labels for each product. As an allergen preventive control, they check the label upon receipt from the label manufacturer to prevent potential label errors in case a mistake was made during printing, and check the label number when labels are applied to product. Checking the label number when the label is applied involves less detailed review than reading the contain statement. The e.g. food company example of an allergen preventive control for reviewing the label upon receipt is shown above, and the preventive control for applying the label to the product is shown on the next slide. Upon receipt, the label coordinator matches the information on the label to the product formula information. This includes the allergen declaration, as well as the listing of ingredients. Note, we do not provide a complete listing of ingredients, for example. Label review could be done only at the labeling step, but many organizations perform 2 label reviews, one upon receipt and 2 at the labeling step. Complex labels require careful review by people trained in technical label wording requirements. Application of the label on the line may be simply matching a label number to the product formula. Training may be appropriate for a label developer. For example, if a mistake is made on the copy sent to the printer. At the pack-weigh label step, the e.g. food company's food safety plan states that all finished product must have the correct pre-labeled carton. The monitoring portion of the allergen preventive control uses the same structure as that for process preventive controls, identifying what, how, when, and who. At this step, the pack line operator matches the label to the product number. Predetermined corrective action addresses what to do with the product if the label is incorrect, as well as identification of the root cause and taking appropriate action to prevent recurrence. As with process controls, the records associated with the allergen preventive control procedure are verified, specifically the label check, log form, and any corrective action or verification records. Whether ingredients are purchased directly from a manufacturer, from a broker, or from a retail store, the manufacturer or grower of the ingredient is the supplier by regulation. See text box. It may be important to understand the level of allergen risk associated with an ingredient supplier and the effectiveness of their food allergen program, e.g. sanitation and labeling. The importance will depend on the nature of the ingredient, the allergen profile of the product, and other products produced by the supplier. Refer to Chapter 13, Supply Chain Preventive Controls, for a discussion of other relevant controls at the supplier level, which may include periodic audits to verify effectiveness of controls. Carefully review the supplier's allergen information related to the raw material, including the allergen label. Does the supplier need allergen preventive control? Do they handle other allergens within their operation? If there is a concern, follow up with the ingredient manufacturer to obtain more information. This is especially relevant if may contain labeling is used on the ingredient. Ensure that the suppliers communicate any formula or labeling changes promptly. Let's take a look at an important definition. Supplier The establishment that manufactures, processes the food, raises the animal, or grows the food that is provided to a receiving facility without further manufacturing, processing by another establishment, except for further manufacturing, processing that consists solely of the addition of labeling or similar activity of a de minimis nature, 21 CFR 117.3. Employee training on allergens is an important factor in implementing an effective food allergen program. This training should include general allergen awareness for all employees and for those assigned to allergen-related tasks, the importance of allergen preventive control, and proper implementation of the preventive control. Not all employees in the food facility have or may be aware of others with food allergies, so it is helpful that they are made aware of the health hazards posed to consumers with allergies to certain foods. Training is useful for employees at all levels of the company. It not only provides an opportunity to build knowledge, but also to communicate the importance of each employee's role in allergen management. Overall, training reinforces a commitment to food safety and highlights changes or improvements in production. Supervisory personnel must be trained in the key areas of allergen preventive control so that they have the knowledge to train and oversee production workers. Food production workers must be trained in each of the areas relevant to their job responsibilities. Food allergen training at the time of initial hire and then at regular intervals reinforces proper practices and reminds workers of their importance to food allergic consumers. The section on allergens in Chapter 4, Chemical, Physical, and Economically Motivated. Food safety hazards is a good starting point for allergen awareness training. Sanitation chemical suppliers frequently have training materials on allergens as well. It is important to know the culture at the facility to identify the type of training that will work at the location. Budget constraints may limit the options, but good external training is available through recognized resources, such as the additional reading list at the end of this chapter. The University of Nebraska's Food Allergy Research and Resource Program, FARRP, provides resources and training relevant for food manufacturers. See link at end of this chapter. Other programs may also be available locally. Food allergens present a risk to consumer health as allergic reactions can be severe to those who are allergic to a given food. Because of ongoing issues facilities have with managing food allergens, allergen issues continue to be a major cause of food safety recalls. Consumers depend on labels to give them accurate information about allergen content. A facility's food allergen program will utilize GMP procedures and allergen preventive controls to minimize allergen-related risk to consumers. GMPs will include elements such as ingredient handling procedures and production scheduling. Food allergen preventive controls are required when allergens are recognized as a hazard requiring a preventive control in the hazard analysis. Allergen preventive controls prevent allergen cross-contact with food allergenic material and ensure products are accurately labeled. A variety of control methods can be used to accomplish these objectives. You have completed the lecture for Chapter 11. Be sure to complete the knowledge check as well as the Chapter 11 exercise. See you in Chapter 12.